Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Aliens and UFOs video. Another entry here based on your suggestions. This one I picked because it seemed like it was a very personal experience, at least for this guy that was involved with this alien encounter. If the best way I could describe it is, if you're comparing like a big blockbuster type movie, like the recent Batman and Superman movie, there's those kind of movies, and then there's the quieter, more personal, more independent movies, the ones that may not have all the big effects and the big impact that the other blockbusters do, but they still feel much more personal. And that's what it seems like with this tale. That's why I picked it, because when I was reading the information tied to it, it pretty much only involves one man and one night, the encounter that he had with this alien and the aliens and the UFO that they were in. But it still was very interesting. The information was very, very fascinating to read. Never heard of this encounter before, and again, the whole purpose of this particular series is to showcase the stuff that is not more well known. So what I'm talking about is the 1967 abduction of a policeman or patrolman called Herb Schirmer. So this was not too far back, just a couple decades or so back, but by all means, this happened in one night of this young policeman's life, and it forever pretty much changed him. There's also a lot of stuff to showcase when it comes to his experience. Apparently, either he's a good drawer of some sort, or he had someone draw what he saw, but he was able to provide a lot of information about that night's experience. So here's what occurred. You have to go back in time again a couple of decades. It was December 3rd, 1967, particularly in a place called Ashland, Nebraska. This guy right here, Herbert Schirmer, he's the only one again that experienced this incident. He was 22 years old at the time. It sounded like he was just barely starting out being a cop. Maybe he was even just about a year or two in. Who knew? But there he was, and then being, I guess, the rookie of sorts, his usual shift involved the night patrols. So he was there in Ashland, Nebraska, just making his usual rounds. Apparently, he described that he was visiting several places that he normally does, like gas stations, which one would imagine are pretty rampant for some of the more illicit stuff later on at night. And as he was passing Highway 6, that's when he saw what he thought were some red lights belonging to a pretty large truck. Maybe he saw them at a distance, but it was around 2 a.m. whenever he saw this at an intersection of Highway 6, and it was described as it was Highway 6 meeting Highway 63. So, being 2 a.m. and seeing this large truck, the lights pertaining to it, at least what he thought it was, he must have realized or thought to himself, you know what, maybe somebody is out doing either bad things in the truck, or maybe a person needs help. So he decided to drive down to that particular spot to see what was going on. But the closer he got to it, that's when he saw that this was not a truck. And in fact, no doubt that he was probably trying to shake his head, seeing if he was thinking to himself if what he was really seeing was real. But sure enough, those red lights were actually portholes belonging to what he described as a large metallic oval-shaped object, almost like your classic UFO. In fact, this is a drawing, I believe, that either he did or someone else did based on his descriptions. And on top of that, this thing was not on the ground. It was actually floating about 8 feet high above the surface of the highway. So, here he is in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. He's seeing this thing, whatever it is. It looked metallic. The way he described it, it was polished, almost like an aluminum surface of some sort. It was, I guess, vibrating, maybe just kind of floating up and down, whoever it was, who knows. And it did have underneath it some kind of landing gear, but again, it was not actually landed. Like it was floating about 8 feet above the ground. And then on top of that, whatever this thing was doing, it was staying right there, and those lights, it either projected some kind of light of some sort, who knows, but he didn't experience it at the beginning. Though I believe the way he described it was, this thing at the very beginning flew towards his patrol car, and then there were these flames that came out from underneath, and much to his shock and I guess surprise, after it flew over his patrol car, then that's when it quickly just disappeared straight up, straight out of sight. Who knows where, but it was completely gone. Now he thought to himself, again this was at 2 a.m., that what he's experienced was just maybe a couple of minutes time, from the time period of him slowly coming up to the red lights to realizing what it was, and then having this thing go over his patrol car and then disappear, was a couple of minutes, maybe 10 minutes at most. But when he returned back to the police station, no doubt probably to either file a report, whatever he could file, I guess, or try to tell others about what he saw, that's when he saw on some clock that it was now actually 3 a.m. It was not 10 minutes. It was not a couple of minutes since, I guess, the time period that he saw this thing. No, it was in fact over an hour with regards to his time. This surprised him because he did not have that perception of time happening so quickly. It had not happened, and yet it had. So whenever that occurred, a little later afterward, that's when he started to feel weird. The way he described it was, Schirmer stated that he started to see like a red welt form on his neck. There was also a severe headache that he kept having, and then on top of that, he was feeling, for lack of a better word, ill. So something was going on, and no doubt because of the sheer coincidence, it had to do with what occurred that night. So cut to February 13th, 1968, a couple of months later, he was brought forth to a guy, a psychologist by the name of Dr. Leo Sprinkle from the University of Wyoming. I don't know how exactly he got to that doctor, or how he was referred to him, or who knows, maybe this guy, Dr. Sprinkle, heard about him and then sought him out. But either way, it was found and recommended that under hypnosis, maybe there was a way for this guy Schirmer to recall truly what happened, because again, the only thing he could not take care of was the lack of time, whatever it was when it came to that time skipping over, and him not being able to remember what occurred. So he was placed under hypnosis, and then that's when he was truly able to recall what occurred. So before this thing shot off into the night sky, Schirmer was able to state that it stopped near his car, like it actually stopped, like it didn't just float over his car and then that was it. No, it literally stopped right in front of his car, and it caused, how it did it, who knows, but it caused his car engine to die, and then the radio that he had on, no doubt probably to make sure that he was able to communicate for his nightly rounds, it went dead silent. And then on top of that, he described that there was this white, strange object that emerged from the UFO. It came straight to his car, probably somewhere close to him, and it began communicating with him. And the way he stated under hypnosis was that the reason for it is Schirmer was being prevented from drawing his gun out of his holster, because no doubt his training was starting to take over shortly before he could be stopped. As a patrolman, his training was usually, pull out his gun under such a bizarre or dangerous circumstance. But in this case, whatever this thing was, this white object, it was preventing him from doing so. And then the way the more hypnosis goes even further, apparently he was either brought forth by the aliens, like there was actual beings that came out, and you're looking at some of those drawings of them here. He described them as being somewhere around 4, maybe 5 feet tall, a little bit shorter than your usual person, but still not too short. They wore some kind of close-fitting, kind of like gray uniforms of some sort, almost like if you could picture a bad 1950s sci-fi movie, probably even from something cheap like the Ed Wood style. That's what they seemed to have. They had silver grayish tone, the black boots, very interesting, right? Because you would never really picture like true aliens wearing boots of some sort, a belt, and then gloves. But the thing that stood out with these aliens, besides again, their height, was the fact that they had some kind of weird emblem on their chest, specifically on the left side. It was a winged serpent of some sort, and you'll see another drawing, a close-up of it here. And this is very notable because this design, whatever this thing is, these winged serpents, apparently they appear throughout several parts of the world. I guess as some form of weird, like as mythology of some sort. Someone might need to point me in the direction of where that stuff was normally seen, but otherwise, that's what they had on their shirts. And then on top of that, they were able to converse with him. They talked to him. I don't know if it was either mentally or physically, but they were able to go over some of the stuff and let him know how it works, what they were doing, and how things worked. Apparently, they talked a lot about electromagnetism, including the idea of how the ship ran, and then some of the computers, I guess, what their version of the computer was in terms of how their UFO operated. And then on top of that, he was able to produce drawings, it looked like, of the inside of the UFO, because by this point it does seem like, yeah, he was truly brought forth inside, and you can see some of the based on the designs here of what the inside looked like. Again, almost like a bad 1950s UFO movie. I mean, it's literally like almost like cardboard sets, based at least on the drawings, like they look like cardboard sets with blinking lights, supposedly to resemble thinking computers. But that is essentially what he interpreted. They didn't do any harm to him, though. They just pretty much conversed, and then that was it. They let him go, and then that's when the hour's time was explained afterward. Now, as far as what this guy Schirmer, what he was able to do with this information, he either, it sounded like from what I was reading, he kind of let some of the information out, like trying to let people know what occurred. But during that time period, unfortunately, he was ridiculed because of what was happening. That location there is probably a small town filled with a small group of people. Word were probably really spread fast in terms of what this guy Schirmer, the people thinking of him in kind of bad ways on this experience, because there was no evidence of anything of what this occurred. There was no proof in terms of other people seeing anything related to it. There was nothing, of course, that he could have as proof in terms of, let's say, something from the ship itself, or any kind of footage, videos, photographs, and even something physical. Like, there's nothing on the ground left by the actual UFO itself and by the alien's presence. Instead, it was just pretty much his word. And when you have somebody like him telling this kind of story to some of the townspeople, well, you can see that that he was ridiculed by them. It's ironic too, because here, if the story is true, you have aliens that treated him with kindness, and then the people from that small town absolutely ridiculed. It was so bad, in fact, that apparently somebody needs to fill me more details on this, because I wasn't able to find much, but apparently his car was blown up. I think somebody actually blew up his car, put dynamite in it, and it was exploded. I don't know if it was out of people being scared for him or being scared from him. Who knows? But then on top of that, he discovered more bad luck, because his wife also left him. I guess he was trying to make sure that his story could be told. Who knows? But then his wife wasn't appreciating it, or maybe she had had enough, and then that's when she left him. There was just a little bit of good news in some ways. He was eventually appointed as police chief of that town, Ashland, but he had to resign 2 months later, because whatever those ill effects from the UFO experience had happened shortly after that date, it was still ongoing, and so he was unable to fulfill his role as police chief there. So, but otherwise, that's it. That's the only information that I have, at least, with regards to the abduction and what occurred for this guy, Herb Schirmer. So if anyone has any more information with regards to it, please post those comments below. That's the only time, though, that incidents occurred. There's never been anything else involving him, or it seems like that location too in Ashland, Nebraska, having any other type of incident as well. But if anyone has more information about that, please, that'd be really, really good to hear. I was trying to see if he might even still be alive, because he was, again, kind of young. He was in his 20s then, and considering that it's that this occurred in 1967. You're looking at about a good 40-50 years. There's still a chance he could be alive. So if anyone has that information too, maybe he might even be making the rounds in terms of the conventions, giving his experience. He certainly has a lot of, as you saw the photos from before, he certainly had a lot of detail that he could provide about that incident. Then that would be really well to hear too. So, well, anyways, hope you enjoyed this more personal tale when it comes to the alien UFOs videos. And as always, thank you so much. Alright, everybody, take care.